as promised, we will focus today on a rather impressive timepiece from Ferdinand Berthoud, the FB1 chronometer Tourbillon. But we had to pay this small tribute to this great man of the watchmaking history in our previous video report to give you hopefully a better understanding of what is being done today. So let's now discover this watch inspired by marine chronometers with its really beautiful movement architecture built around this very large tourbillon cage and its distinctive fusée chaîne mechanism.
The cahier de charge was really and the idea to use as many elements as possible coming from a marine chronometer made by Berthoud.
So the philosophy, well, which was at least the one that I tried to put into place, was of this engineer who's making maybe not so much a wristwatch in the classical sense, but of a time artifact which has to fit on the wrist. In that sense, well, initially we started with a box, right? And the initial idea was actually to go back to this box that has the round clock in it, and the octagonal shape in fact just came from the idea of taking the corners off the box, because not knowing whether he would have made wristwatches or anything else, and considering what else is on the market, I thought it was more interesting to go into an object rather than another watch. So that's why it has this particular shape, but in fact it's not so strange when you look at it, 45-degree angle. Finally, the result was actually taking the box apart, adding some detailing so that we can put it on the wrist. And by taking it apart like this, it allows us to take the central cylinder, which is waterproof, and put the sides on it, put the strap connections on it, and it's held together very simply with four bolts, which are designed like the bolts he used to use. The second hand is very much like his second hands, which is a very long straight line with a round counterweight, which is solid. For the hour hand, I took this curved arrow, hollowed it out, and that became the whole hand. And for the minute hand, it's the same basic shape, and I integrated the hollow disc into that just to remind people of the way that he used to tell his minutes and seconds apart. So there's a lot of things which came from there, even though obviously not directly. It's not a revival watch where you take his dial and make it again today. Everything is different, but I hope the idea stays the same. If you look at our astronomical watch number 3, you can see where the actual dial inspiration came from, which was the white hours and minutes counter with the white seconds ring around it. So that basic idea came from there. What's quite different in this case is the outer seconds ring. If you look very carefully, you'll see that it's sandblasted sapphire with white painting behind it, so it's actually translucent and has very nice play of light and shadows through it. So if you look at the dial in that way, you'll see that there's quite a lot of detailing in it, even though it's very simple. That's one of them. The other one is the typeface. In this case, the idea was to go back to maybe some of the curves that you might find in handwriting and combine it with what we would consider today a modern typeface. And so the typeface itself is it's quite strict because he's an engineer. But it does have a little curvaceousness in the letters, which reminds you of the handwriting character of his old engraved dials.
The development, all in all, took more than 4 years, including movement, case, and everything else. And I think the most important, the most challenging part was to miniaturize this entire fusée chain assembly, and to make it hold in a relatively open space, because the very interesting thing about our movement is you can look inside from all sides. You have the portholes in the case and you can actually see everything work. And the movement is built on columns. Just like Ferdinand Berthoud built his movements, except that everything is very much miniaturized. And not to forget, the fusée chain are suspended. They're only held on one side. And this allowed us to build the movement relatively flat. A lot of challenges in one movement.